Yeah, of course. I think as dancers before you join the company, and it's basically like a 2 years audition. Just because you do need to prove yourself in everything that you do, and it is very tough mentally because we are very young when we are, going through those stages, and but then it makes the transition a little bit easier because you're used to the mental pressure um, of the job.
Virginia, thanks so much for taking the time to talk with us today.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm really happy to be here.
Excellent. I want to start by going through your career, sort of where you started. I know you grew up in Milan, Italy, and and you began your training there. Tell us how you started in dance, how you found ballet in particular, and then what your training was like at home, and what the process was for you getting to the US and eventually JKO school.
Yeah, so I started dancing when I was 3 years old. I was always dancing around the house with my mom, and my mom was like, why not bring her to a ballet studio? And so I did go to the ballet studio, and from there I kept dancing until I was about 8 years old. And at around eight, I feel like that's when it got a little bit more intense, and that's when I felt more pressure towards dancing, and I actually decided to stop. I was like, this is not fun anymore. It's
Mm-hmm.
gotten like a lot. It's getting more pressure, and I just felt like it was time for me to take a little break from it. But in that break, I actually kept dancing. I was always dancing with my friends, making choreographies at school. Like I just could never stop dancing. So at some point when I was around 11 years old, one summer, I just like talked to my mom, and I was like, I think I want to start dancing again. And I don't know how I decided that or necessarily where it came from. It just was a feeling that I had. And also in those 2 years that I stopped dancing, I tried everything else possible. So I think maybe that kind of led me to, back to dance. Um, yeah, so then at 11, 12 years old, I auditioned for La Scala Ballet School, and that's how I got in. There is like a thorough audition process there at 12, so I had to do that.
Right.
And then I stayed at La Scala for about 6 years. And I during those 6 years, I always traveled. Like I always did summer intensives everywhere in the world. I went to Royal Ballet School for the summer intensive. I went to Victor Latte in Madrid. I did the summer intensive of the School of American Ballet, actually, and which is the school of the New York City Ballet. And
Right.
so yes, and at 16, that's when I decided to do the summer intensive for American Ballet Theatre. And because I always loved New York. I went there when I was 8 years old, and I fell in love with the city. And then through the years, I started looking at the company on YouTube videos as much as I could see online, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna, go try an audition for the summer intensive. I got in. I eventually went to the summer intensive, and I got a scholarship at the summer intensive to join the JKO school. So that kind of was what led me to the JKO school.
So did they approach you about a scholarship for the JKO school? How did that come about out of the summer intensive?
Yeah, they did approach me. I think at the end of the summer program, they do approach some students, the ones that they like the most, and they do offer scholarships for sure.
So you get to JKO school. What was the training like there compared to what you were doing at La Scala?
Well, it was definitely different. So at La Scala we do Cecchetti style, and I did a little bit of Vaganova as well. So it's very much like it's more longer exercises, more like dancing through the exercise. And at ABT, it's more sharp and a little bit shorter. So that's kind of what the biggest difference was for me. And it's definitely at ABT was a little bit more dynamic than I was used to. I think the Cecchetti style is a little bit slower in the approach and especially in the small jumps.
Mm.
But I mean, ABT, the training at ABT mixes together all of the styles. So like Cecchetti, Vaganova, Royal Ballet style. So it's like a little bit of a mix of everything. So I didn't really feel like an extreme difference when I went there and, to class at ABT for the first time, because it was, there were still elements of the training that I did at La Scala for sure.
Mm. Mm. What was the training regimen like? Was it about the same in terms of how much studio time you had and how much rehearsal time you had?
Yeah, actually, so at La Scala, I did school in the afternoon. So what I did was ballet in the morning and then school in the afternoon. And ballet would go from around 10:30 until like around 2. And then from 2 until 9 p.m. it was school. Like I would go to high school. And that was pretty intense. But the amount of hours, I would say at ABT, the school at ABT does more because some days we would finish at 4 p.m. We had some contemporary classes and Pilates classes. Um, it was just more hours overall. But at La Scala, we definitely did more performances because the year round we performed a lot. So instead of the JKO, you do about, I think, one full performance a year at the end of the year, which is normal for the school. But at La Scala, we were also touring and dancing, which made it easier for me to transition into the corps de ballet, because at La Scala I was already used to doing corps de ballet because we were dancing a lot. We did Serenade, we did Who Cares, we did La Sylphide. We did a lot.
So yeah, so were all those La Scala performances, were those all part of, let's say, the school's curriculum, or were they as part of like a company that that the school was associated with?
No, it was the school curriculum.
Oh, okay.
So inside the curriculum, the school would bring different performances. When I was there, like, of course, you had the Nutcracker, and then we did our own Nutcracker, and then we did a performance at the end of the year. But we also did a couple of tours here and there, and we also got to perform on the La Scala Theater stage. So that was it's just like very nice experiences performing wise, but definitely as a curriculum itself, I think ABT gave me a little bit more material in terms of like how many classes. Like we had 2 hours of class, then an hour of point, then pas de deux class, then we did some contemporary character. So it was just overall we did more hours towards just like the classes that we were supposed to do at JKO.
Right.
But I also only spent half a year in JKO. I spent like...
Oh, really?
Yeah, I only spent 4 months in JKO before I joined the studio company. So it was a very quick transition for me from school to junior company.
Oh, that's interesting. Is that typical?
No, you usually spend a year in JKO, but a few spots open up. in January, because I think people had to go transition into the company sooner
Mm.
because they needed more people. So then spots opened up in the studio company, and they decided to take me from the JKO. I was in the last level.
Got it.
So
Got it.
yeah.
And so then you transitioned into the junior company, and you had mentioned before that your experience at La Scala aided that transition into the company. Um, so what was that transition into the company like for you, having had that experience at La Scala?
Well, the junior company, we it's of course like a small company. It's about, I think, around 15 people between
Mm.
men and women, and that was definitely, I think, one of the hardest. I spent a year and a half in the studio company, the junior company, and that was one of the, I think, hardest years for sure, because you are traveling a lot, and it's very like, it's not a whole, school. It's 15 people, and you're dancing a lot, and then you're traveling, and you're doing a lot of classes. So that was very intense, but it definitely helped me grow as a dancer. And um, and then from there, I got into the company. But when I transitioned into the company, in the studio company, as well as corps de ballet, I would say, just because you are, just only 15 people, so you can't really do much
Right.
of corps de ballet. But I think what helped me in my experience at La Scala, then when I actually joined the company, then it was the corps de ballet work. Like, I knew already how the corps de ballet worked, just because I have experienced that dancing different ballets. We danced, what did we dance? Paquita, and we danced, like I told, yes, Serenade, the Neckcracker. So I've experienced already.
Mm.
I had to be in line. I had to dance a certain way. I had to follow people. Like, I was experienced in that for sure. As
Right.
well as, in the studio company, you do more solo roles and more. So I had both sides, which was really nice.
Well, and it's interesting too. When I was talking to Luciana, we one of the things that we discussed was some of the ways that companies use tools to test their dancers to see who can handle what things. And it sort of sounds like the junior company plays that role where they use the junior company to see how much a dancer can handle and see if they can handle the intense schedule and the intense training and the extra stage time that comes with a small company. And
Yeah.
it sounds like that was your experience also. Do you feel like that was used sort of as a proving ground for you?
Yeah, of course. I think since, I mean, as dancers, before you join the company, and it's basically like a 2 years audition. Just because you do need to prove yourself in everything that you do. And it is very tough mentally, because we are very young when we are, going through those stages. And but then it makes the transition a little bit easier, because you're used to the mental pressure um, of the job.
Right. Did you have tools that you used to handle the mental pressure of the job?
Yeah, well, at the beginning, I think I really wanted to just prove myself when I first joined the company. Um, so for me, it was always just kind of be on top of things before they even could, make me prove something. I would just like, I wanted to anticipate it. So I always studied videos in the evening, and they used to throw me around in all the spots. So I've studied spots like the 2 hours before a show. I was the person that was learning like every single different spot.
Wow.
And and then when you first join, it's a lot, because you of course want to just be focused on that, and just be focused on like proving that you're enough to be there. And yeah, what helped me at the beginning, just like doing my own thing and learning the videos just made me feel more confident, because I didn't want to be unprepared. I feel like being unprepared makes me feel not confident, and at the same time doesn't let me fully show what I can do if I don't feel confident first.
Right. Right. So what you are in the court of ballet now, or have you been? Are you still in? You're in the court of ballet now. Okay.
Yeah, I'm in the Corda Ballet.
And so and you've been there now with the main company for how long?
2000, 5 years.
5 years.
Yes, five
Okay.
years. 5 years. Then of course we didn't have a season for like a year and a half.
Right. Right. So tell us about that a little bit. What was it like getting into the main company, and then what, a year later or a year and a half later, we were into the pandemic, and so you then spent the next year and a half or 2 years just trying to figure out what was going on. So what was that like for you and for the company, I guess, as a whole, from the time that you got in and then the pandemic came around?
Well, it was definitely tough. Like it wasn't easy, because it's something that nobody has experienced before, not just our company, but nobody in the world. So it was very hard mentally to accept that, and to try and figure out what was best for my life, and then in the meantime the company was trying to figure out what was best for the company. So,
Right.
well, because everything was so high, like the whole company was just like going up and up and up, and then for everything to stop, it felt a little bit like a crash. Because as well, as a young dancer, you I tended at least to put a lot of focus on my job, which doesn't mean now, like now I'm also very focused on my job, but I definitely have a different approach towards it because of COVID. um, because a little bit of, let's say, my whole life kind of crashed once COVID started, just because we were dancing a lot, traveling all over. Like I was 20, like I was 8 9 hours a day in the studio,
Mm. Mm.
and from going from that to complete zero was a huge change. But it also moved things up for a part of it for the better. Yeah, well, the company, we stopped for a while. We stopped for a long time, actually. We didn't really have shows or full classes for about a year after, and we just got back. We got back in 2021, the fall of 2021. That's when the company first started back. But I don't think things were fully back to normal until this season, which is
Mm.
also still a little bit mm, not exactly how it was before, simply because the world is not how it was before. But we're getting there. So during the time where we were in quarantine, the company tried to make some bubbles and virtual projects. So that was kind of how the company was kept together, let's say.
Mm.
And in that time, also, I went back to Italy to just be with my family, because everything was virtual, so I didn't really need to be in the US. And then, yeah, when we come back, just everything was a little bit different. Everybody was more as well, like together in the same situation, in a sense that we live the same reality.
Mm.
So everybody
Mm.
had a different understanding of how another person might feel in that moment, or how we were all feeling, which was a little bit of shock from everything that
Right.
happened. I mean, as
Right.
a dancer, we work with our bodies. We can't just like work at home. And as much as we can take classes from home, they're not going to be the same as us dancing 9 hours in the studio and then doing different shows. So it was hard mentally, because you had to keep in shape somehow and then
Right.
come back to shape, trying not to get injured, as well as always wearing a mask. And wearing a mask is very hard as an athlete. And all the different, conditions in which we had to come back to, which isn't what we're used to. And with somebody that works with their bodies, it's much harder, as you know, of course.
Right.
It's like,
Right.
yeah, because you can simply just work from home. So it was just like a big shock. But coming back to it, it's definitely you're more grateful for what you do when you feel like it's been taken away from you so easily and so quickly.
Yes. Right.
Which is kind of what I realized, because I was very focused in my job, but more as I would say, like, it could be healthy and unhealthy to be really completely in it, because it could kind of put you a little bit away from your passion, because you just kind of forget that you love it. So then you become so obsessed with it that it becomes your whole world. And it just, like, it shouldn't have that much weight on your life, because it is, I mean, at the end of the day, it's your passion, and you always have to remember that's like why you do it. It's because you love it so much. And now I'm very grateful I have a body that lets me do that. And um, because not everybody can, for sure. And after COVID as well, like, there were so many instances in which I was like, oh my God, it's so hard to just like keep going.
Right.
And I'm very grateful as well for my body to just like, that's been strong, and I kept going through it too.
Right.
So yeah, so there
Well,
were highs and lows.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's interesting. I think I've thought in the past about something that you sort of alluded to, which was an appreciation for the time you get in the studio now, where it wasn't there. We spent so long, having to train at home, that once we were back in, there was a little honeymoon period where we
Yeah,
we all we all were appreciative again about being in the studio. And I think it could be important to remind everyone listening, and remind ourselves occasionally, to be appreciative of the time that we have in the studio, and the fact that our bodies are able to get us there and keep moving. That's definitely something that doesn't last forever, and is
yeah,
something I think to be appreciated.
yeah, for sure. Because like, because when a simple bar and the right floor, and the mirrors just go a long way
Yes.
for us.
Yes.
So yeah, every time I like try to remind myself that I'm very lucky to do what I do, as like, to do my work as my passion, because not everybody gets to do that. And yes, sometimes it's hard, of course, because every job is hard,
Right.
and especially it hits you harder if it's your passion, that's for sure.
Right.
But at the end of the day, you're there because you love it, and we are very lucky to do it.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, so I want to shift gears a little bit, and I want to talk about Candlelighters NYC, which I know is an organization that you're involved with. Tell us what the organization is. What is its mission? What is your role and position with them? How long have you been working with them? Tell us about what that is and what it's all about.
Yeah, so Candelighters is a wonderful organization. They work with kids that are fighting cancer, and they work with the kids and their families to support them. So that's kind of what they go about, and they do everything in their power to support those families, because um, that's what we can do. Is just support
Right.
in that way. And I do that, and I help through dance. So I try and support families through dance. So my journey with them started in 2019. I felt that I really wanted to volunteer. I just wanted to find but I couldn't find an organization that fully, I was like, okay, I'm gonna, I don't know, I just didn't find an organization that was right for me in that sense. And then I found randomly on Instagram, Candlelighters, New York City, and I contacted them. And it's so funny because I contacted them and we exchanged a couple of emails, like, great to meet you and everything, but I never really spoke to them or saw them because at that time it was in the summer and I was in Italy with my family during that time. And then when I came back, the second day I was back at 6 a.m., I get a call from the founder. And she's like, are you free today to come upstate with me and the kids and just go to the farm? And well, I was awake because of the jet lag. So in that sense, it was great because I was wide awake from 5 a.m. She's like, can you meet me at 7 a.m.? And I was like, I've never met this person. I just like, I don't know them, but I said yes. And I just went for it. So, and I mean, she's wonderful and they're all wonderful in the organization. So I wasn't, as soon as I met them, I wasn't worried. So we went upstate with the farm and with the kids and they're wonderful. And it was just a great experience. And since then, I decided that I wanted to just volunteer with them. And then like about 5 months later, I got the idea that I was like, why not just do a little showing for the kids? Just why not? Because through them, I also realized how much just a simple gesture can make a difference in somebody's life. And I think dance is a gift as well, and that can touch people. Sometimes as dancers, we don't see that because we're so involved in our own mind and, our own careers, which is fine. Because of course you need to be determined and have that sense of self when you want to achieve, good career in a company. But at the same time, it kind of sidetracks you into just making everything about yourself. And it just kind of opened my eyes up to being like, it's not all about you, and it can touch life. And that actually does make a difference, instead of being, oh yeah, it's just a performance, how well did I do in this performance? Because it's, at the end of the day, it's not about that. It's something that you give in a theater and something that you give to touch people and to touch people's hearts. And I think that's the power of it, and that's the power that dance is, like, basically it's a universal language, so everybody can understand it, no matter if you speak Spanish, if you speak Italian, if you speak French, any language. Dance you will understand because it's an emotion, and it's emotions that the human being just feels, and everybody can relate to that. So I kind of, when, I don't know, just realizing that, and I started creating these shows, which were literally shows in which me and my fellow ABT dancers would dance for about 30 minutes, and then with all the families we would dance together, and it was great. I loved it, everybody loved it, and I just kind of kept doing it. So I did a couple, and during COVID is when I actually had time to devote myself to doing more of these things and really truly understand where like how much dance can actually change people's lives, because I knew it could, but I didn't fully see it until, first of all, I did the showing, and that's when I actually started realizing, oh, it does like it can make a difference. And um, and during COVID, I started this interview series on Instagram, and because I was like, there is people that must have been already doing it. You know, when you think of something and there is like somebody's probably already doing it somewhere in the world.
Yes. Yes.
So I looked for those people and I wanted to interview them. I wanted to interview people that actually were doing what I was feeling. um, and because I wanted to show the world in a way, I mean, through Instagram,
Right.
that
Right.
there is people and organizations that are doing it. They are using dance to fight, to help social change. And yeah, I just kind of wanted to showcase that and show people that there is these organizations, and if anybody was interested in that, they could also contact those organizations, because a part of me feels like as many things as one person can do, if we keep just creating so many organizations, yes, of course, every organization is different. If it's something that nobody has done it before, that's great. But also, I think some of the organizations do need a platform to just be seen a little bit more and just known, because I also didn't know them. So I felt like it was, and I wanted to meet those people. So I was like, why don't we just meet just online? And everything, you
Right.
know, we were in quarantine, so we couldn't go out, we couldn't do anything. So I was just like, why not create an interview series that kind of showcase what people are doing and what people are already doing? Because sometimes it just feels like maybe you think of something and then you're like, oh, nobody's doing it, or you know, nobody's thinking about this, nobody's thinking about using dance for social change. But there is so many organizations that have been doing that for years already.
Hmm.
And um, of course, the more the merrier.
Right. Right.
Because
Right.
dance is wonderful, and it can touch so many people's lives. And yeah, so then during COVID, I just started doing that more and more. So I started, well, teaching the Candlelighters kids more. I helped coordinate with ABT an autism workshop, dance workshop for people with autism or that are differently abled. And then I started interviewing people, and I also did a training in North Macedonia with the organization My Lips. And I did that for about a week, where it taught me their method on how they were teaching dance to kids to create social change. And I loved that organization as well. They use actually studied methods to help people go from you know, poverty and thinking that they cannot achieve much in their life, to being more confident in themselves, having dreams, giving them resources, and all of these all through dance. So just one dance class in 12 weeks, like 2 dance classes for 12 weeks, can transform a kid's life. But actually, not just making them become a principal dancer in a company, like just making them think that they can go to school and they can, you know, think about the just bringing them together. He builds friends and friendship, um, and just more, a lot of skills that you need in your life to go forward, that a lot of them maybe give up on. So I think that was very eye-opening to me, for sure. And because it just gave me a full method to actually teach kids in a way that would create change. But it's not classical ballet, it's just a method that works for everybody. And they have organizations all over the world, they have schools all over the world that are working on this, and they track it, and they track the progress. They as well help small businesses, they help women at the same time. They have so much that they do, and it's amazing how they're all achieving this through dance. I mean, because it is a
Amazing.
language.
Yeah.
Yeah, because what was very interesting actually to me was that also through this class, you can teach an actual language. I mean, everybody
Oh,
understands the
interesting.
movement that they're doing, but sometimes, maybe if you want kids to learn some English, you just like point at your shoulders and you go shoulder, and then everybody needs to repeat shoulder. And maybe, you personally cannot communicate with them. Like I couldn't communicate fully with them when I was in North Macedonia, but then we could understand each other. And that was the beauty of it
Right.
because
Right.
we just didn't fully need to speak the same language, but we could understand each other from like signaling, movements, and emotions, expressions.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, that's a good segue into talking about your teaching. And now I've seen you teach firsthand. And you've been teaching for a few years now. And I think it was check my notes, an article from 2020 where you talked about uh, starting to teach and enjoying teaching in general. Is that something that you're doing outside of Candlelighters and like in general? And is it something that you see yourself doing into the future?
Yeah, so during COVID, we had the great opportunity to do the ABT teacher training. And that was the first time I opened myself up fully to teaching. Because before I didn't really have a chance, or I didn't think about teaching in general. And during COVID, it just all came. I did the ABT teacher training curriculum. I did all the levels, and
Mm.
of course, it was all virtual. And then after that, I started teaching the ABT summer intensive, and then some classes here and there, and then I started teaching some of the Candlelighters kids, and I started doing more and more at the summer intensive, just more and more classes in general. And and it was great. Like I didn't know how I felt about teaching before, and now seeing the different approaches to teaching as well, like doing the mind leaps training, which is a different teaching than like the classical ballet training teaching.
Mm.
It just kind of opened my eyes up to how I want to be as a teacher,
Right.
because there is
Right.
so many teachers out there, but just feeling that I can give my own approach to how I teach, and just transmit the things that I want to transmit to the students the way I want to do them, is very powerful to me, because there is a lot of toxicity in the dance world, and a lot of teachers that are not they're not good to the students. And I just like seeing that. I just didn't want to be that, and I hope never to be that. So it just gives me a little bit of um I like it because it gives you a little bit of power, in a sense that you can change a little bit of the ballet world simply by teaching, and teaching the right way, and not making it fully toxic in any way for anybody that is taking a
Right.
class, because ballet is about, everybody's unique, and of course it's very hard, and you have to be determined if you want to be a professional. But ballet dance itself is for everybody, so nobody should ever feel like somebody is not made for dance, because dance is for everyone. Of course, to be a professional dancer, of course, like it's a job, and you have to be very determined and work very hard, but dance itself is for everyone. So I kind of just
Right.
want to transmit that when I teach.
One of the things that I noticed watching you teach. So I started teaching when I was 17. So I can unfortunately say more than half my life I've been teaching now. And so it took me a long time to sort of develop my style and my approach, and it took a lot of time studying other teachers and things like that. One of the things that I noticed when I was watching you teach the other day, you had great insight. Your communication was very, very clear, and I think that the flow of your class was really it was really good. It was really, I think it was really beneficial for the dancers. And I know that, I am into ballet, so I enjoy watching ballet class. But it was a nice class to watch also. So you can take that for what it's worth. But I completely agree that finding a way to communicate these difficult ideas, because like you said, if you want to be a professional and if you want to study the craft to its fullest at any level, at any let's say performance level. If you want to study the craft to its fullest, it's a very difficult thing to master, and it takes discipline to do so. And so finding a way as a teacher to instill and talk about some of these really difficult concepts that are required for mastering the craft is well, like you said, it's critical to a student potentially being able to move on from it, so to speak. That
Yeah.
is to say, get something out of it and not completely, break down or lose themselves in the process. So, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely,
No,
completely
that's
agree.
true. Because also we start so young.
Right.
So while we learn all of these, we are developing. And one small thing can set up a whole set of problems mentally, like the smallest
Yeah.
comment. And it's
Yeah.
so important that teachers learn how to use the right words. And of course, we're humans and we make mistakes, but um, it's very important to follow, especially if somebody wants to become a professional, to just encourage them as much as you can and to be approaching dance in a healthy way.
Completely. And I'll comment on the other side of that also. You had said that it's important for teachers to learn to use the right words. And absolutely, it's also important that the students, so this is teachers teach your students to understand what the right words are and understand the meaning behind what your teachers are saying. That even though they might use certain phrases or words for something, it might not. Make sure that you're taking it the way that they mean it and not in some other way, because the communication is just as important from the students' end as it is from the teachers' end. There is a cooperation there, I would say.
Yeah, yeah, of course. It needs to for sure go both ways. And the teachers need to be explaining very well what they mean, and then the students need to just understand what the teacher mean and not what you think she meant or he meant um, in their head. So
Right.
yeah, so just
Right.
in both ways, it's about the right communication.
So, I'm gonna start to wrap us up here. Uh, what let's say advice might you have for young dancers or not as young dancers who are trying to find some sort of path into being able to dance at we'll call it a high level, full time? What kind of guidance might you give a young dancer?
I think one thing is be very determined and don't let anyone stop you from wanting from keep go from just keep going in your own path, because a lot of times there's so many outside things that can stop you and can get in the way, but just remember that it is your passion and it is something that you can do in your life if you really want to, and you just need to keep going and just be true to yourself. Don't look at anybody else. That's one thing. It's yes, you can look at others to find some inspiration, but just remember what is right for you and what is good for you, and just stay true to yourself and to your dancing, because everybody that is unique, and one person's comment doesn't make you good or bad. And you're just you, and you're confident in your abilities, and you're confident in who you are as a dancer. So even if you look at the 50 Instagram videos of other people dancing, just remind yourself that you are unique and you don't have to be like anybody else, and you can just be you with your dancing, because that's the beauty of what we bring on stage. We're human beings, and um, each one of us is different, of course. So don't let yourself fit into a box. Yeah, that's kind of my advice.
Excellent. Was there anything that you wanted to promote or talk about that you're doing, any projects that you have going on or anything like that?
I think just come and watch ABT. If you want, you can follow me on Instagram, Virginia Lensi. And, I always update with performances or other things that I'm doing. And yeah, it was great teaching at Charm City Ballet.
Well, thank you very much, Virginia. We
Thank
really
you.
appreciate you taking the time to share your experiences with us today.
Thank you so much for inviting me.